What is going on, guys? ScorpionSlayer66 here, coming at you for another edition of my monthly vinyl pickups. This time I am joined by my lovely younger brother Skylar, who, if you guys don't know, he was in a previous video of mine. I will link it or card it or whatever. But I thought I'd have him join, so if he has anything to say about some of these albums, he can put in his input. So let's get right to it. So I only got one cassette tape this month, and it's Neil Young's Harvest. I love this album. You guys are going to see it again later in the episode. But yeah, he's actually the one that got me into cassette collecting, so...
Yeah, I almost stole this one. This one's easily my favorite cassette you have.
Yeah, it's a really good album if you guys haven't heard it. Again, we'll talk about it a little bit later. So the first record I picked up this month, this is by a band whose name I don't know how to pronounce. I think it's like Tone Starts Bandit, but it's spelled very weirdly. But these guys, they opened up for Mac DeMarco when we went and saw him, and they were really good. They were like a weird post-rock indie group. Like, one of their songs was like 22 minutes. So they're really just out there in terms of experimentation with indie music.
A lot better than I thought they would be.
Yeah, we thought they were going to suck, but they actually did really good, so had to support them while you could. Alright, so next up, you guys know I really like The Doors, so I will pretty much pick up anything I don't have by them, and I saw this for like 10 bucks, I think, so I picked it up. This is The Doors' Weird Scenes Inside the Goldmine. Haven't been able to listen to this one yet, and I'm kind of guessing that it's either a compilation or a live album, so whenever I listen to it, I'll let you guys know.
You can't go wrong with The Doors, though.
Yeah, you really can't. Even their live stuff's great, so cool to have this one. So next up, this was at the $2 bin at one of our local record stores. This is Simon & Garfunkel, The Sounds of Silence. The last one I needed to have the full set, so I was really stoked to find it in the $2 bin. And I mean, you really can't go wrong with some of these songs. Obviously, The Sounds of Silence was like one of the biggest songs of their career, if not the biggest, so...
I got both the cassette and vinyl for $4.
Yeah, he's really into Simon & Garfunkel, so really cool to finally have this one. So always love adding to my Bob Dylan collection. As you guys know, I love him. This is Another Side of Bob Dylan, which was his second or third album, and it was a really different shift from where he was going early in his career. So not one of my favorite Bob Dylan albums. It has some of my favorite songs, but overall as a project, it's not comparable to a lot of his other work, but still really cool. I got this for super cheap, so...
What can you tell me about this one?
It's kind of like folky stuff. This was before he really went like electronic. So it's still very folk-driven. It's a lot like his earlier stuff, like I said, like his self-titled debut, and even those first few, like Freewheelin' and stuff like that. So just some really good like folk rock type stuff. Another band I always love to collect for is Black Flag, and this is their compilation of the first 4 years. So these were the years that preceded Henry Rollins, which most people see as the best Black Flag era. So I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the early stuff. I mean, I like the Keith Morris stuff, but other than that, a lot of it doesn't stand out to me. I'm really a Henry Rollins type person. So another $2 bin find. I've actually been on the hunt for this one for a little bit, and this is the Byrds' Mr. Tambourine Man. I've been really interested in this album ever since I saw Rolling Stones put it in, like, it was either their top 150 or top 200 albums list. And I listened to it and I really love it, especially obviously the cover of Mr. Tambourine Man by Bob Dylan. It's a lot more energetic, a lot more rock inspired as opposed to that song, so very cool to find for just $2.
I can't sit down and listen to this album. I have to be up and about in a car, like, moving.
Yeah, for sure. Really good album, though. Really good, like, 70s type cover songs of famous other artists. So, really good stuff, especially for $2. So, next up, I've been adding a lot to my David Bowie collection as of recent due to our best friend Casey, and I picked up a copy of Diamond Dogs. Now, this is before the, what I call, peak Bowie stuff. It was released right before Young Americans, which became right before Station to Station, and Station to Station and on is like my absolute favorite era of Bowie, but still some really great songs in here. Obviously Rebel Rebel became one of the biggest songs of his career, and obviously Diamond Dogs is a great title track, so definitely worth having in the collection, even if it's not one of the higher esteemed ones when you compare like the Berlin Trilogy or like the Hunky Dory Ziggy Stardust era. So
yeah, I recall Diamond Dogs, but I don't think I've heard the rest of it.
Yeah, I'll show it to you at some point. Really good album, though. Super happy to add to my Bowie collection. So, always happy, again, to add to my Fugazi collection, and this is their album Steady Diet of Nothing. One of my favorite Fugazi albums. It has Exit Only, which would become one of the biggest songs of their career, but some really good, like, in tune with its instrumentation, melodic approach style to punk rock, which is something you really don't see in the genre. Usually it's all about the energy and the viscera behind it, as opposed to how well the music is made, but really good stuff. Repeater's like one of my all-time favorite albums, and I just didn't have any of their other stuff, so I added this when I saw it. So one of my goals by the end of the year is to have a complete Elliott Smith collection, and I brought myself one step closer to that with his self-titled debut album. This has Needle in the Hay on it, which is arguably my favorite Elliott Smith song. It's just so well written and performed. It really hits you deep down, even if like you don't feel the same way as him. Just the way that he puts it together puts you in that kind of mindset. And if you guys have watched any of my videos before, you'll know he's my all-time favorite songwriter. So just all these songs are written so beautifully and just poetically. It's just great stuff.
Needle in the Hay, you and I have discussed, is probably one of the best on the album.
Yeah, it's easily my personal favorite. I think it might be my favorite Elliott Smith song as a whole, like I said. So again, just want to have the complete collection by the end of the year, and I think I'm only missing like 2 albums at this point. So I finally picked up a Frank Zappa album for my collection, and it's my favorite one, which is Hot Rats. Now, this is some really bizarre ass, I wouldn't even call it psychedelic, but it's like the only thing that's coming to my mind. So it's like weird psychedelic rock. If you guys listen to like Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band, he was an integral part to Frank Zappa's career, and this album is just fucking weird, but it's so good. It's so well played. The guitars are amazing on it, and Willie the Pimp is probably my favorite Zappa song. But yeah, really happy to finally add some to my collection, and hopefully I will be adding more as time goes on. So this month I added a lot to my Neil Young collection, starting off with an original pressing of Harvest. Now, if you guys saw one of my last final pickups, you would have seen that I picked up the remastered version. Literally just a couple weeks later I found an original, so I should have just been patient, but I gave the remaster to one of my friends, so I guess it worked out in the end. But very cool. My favorite Neil Young album, I think songwriting-wise and instrumentally, it's his most interesting. I might like the songwriting itself more and After the Gold Rush, but as a whole project, this definitely trumps it for me personally.
It's my favorite project he's ever done.
Yeah, it's just really good, like country southern rock type stuff. If you guys have never heard Neil Young, you should really give him a try. If you get past his voice, he's one of the best artists of all time in my personal opinion. So
you really don't like his voice?
A lot of people don't, because Dad hates his voice. He has a very different approach to his vocals, just like Bob Dylan did previous to him, so really good stuff. If you guys don't like his voice, I definitely encourage you to try and get over that, or try and listen past it, because a lot of the instrumentals are fantastic. So next up we have Comes a Time by Neil Young. I haven't gotten to listen to this one yet, but according to a lot of people, this usually falls in like his top 10, 15 albums, which he has like a near 50 album discography, so anything in his top 15 is probably really good stuff. So next up, this is Neil Young and Crazy Horse. Everybody knows this is Nowhere. Most people put this in his top 3 or 5 albums. I would probably put it towards like my 5 or 10. A lot of really good songs on here though. Obviously like Cinnamon Girl and Running Dry are 2 of my favorite Neil Young songs, and a lot of other popular ones like Cowgirl in the Sand, Down by the River on here. Just really well-rounded record, and especially this was trying to prove to everybody that he was something different than Buffalo Springfield, which is his previous band, Crosby, Stills and Nash. So he was really just trying to prove himself, and he really came into his own on this album. It's a really good one. So another one that I usually see in people's like top 5 or top 10 from Neil is On the Beach, and while I agree it's in my top 10, it's probably in that lower area just because a lot of his other stuff clicks with me more. But really instrumentally diverse album on this, and I think that's why people like it so much. And just, again, Neil usually has great songwriting, and that transfers over to this album. And this album cover is just kind of beautiful as well, so really happy to have this one. So next up is one of my personal favorite Neil albums. This is Neil Young and Crazy Horse's Rust Never Sleeps. It was really cool how they recorded the first side all instrumental and very Neil Young to the core, but then on the second side it's all live stuff recorded with him and Crazy Horse, and it's more electric, more energetic, and I really love the contrast between My Hey Hey Into the Blue and then the last song My Hey Hey Into the Black. It's a lot different, and I love when albums start and end on a different note. But again, really good stuff. Crazy Horse was doing probably their best instrumental work at this time in my personal opinion, and just definitely one of his best albums.
And both of those songs show up in my top 20 tracks by him.
Yeah, definitely. Especially Into the Black. It's so energetic and electric. It's just a great song. So I also finished out my Sufjan Stevens collection this month, starting off with Enjoy Your Rabbit. Now, most people put this in his lower tier albums, and I would most definitely agree with that. While I don't hate the album necessarily, it's just not as interesting as a lot of his later stuff would be, and we both have a complaint about the track listing. It's just all the same thing. It's called Year of Blank. So there's like Year of the Ox, Year of the Rooster, Year of the Dog, except for
Enjoy Your Rabbit.
Enjoy Your Rabbit, and that's the only reason why that song sticks out so much to me personally. But yeah, again, Sufjan Stevens really never did anything wrong, but this was the closest he ever came to making like a subpar album.
I didn't enjoy it as much as the rest of them.
Yeah, definitely. This one doesn't compare to anything like Illinois, Carrie and Lowell, or anything like that. So next up for Sufjan Stevens, we have the All Delighted People EP. One of my more standout albums or releases from Sufjan Stevens. It's just very instrumentally diverse, and coming from a guy who every single album is instrumentally diverse, it's really cool that this one sticks out from the pack, especially like against the bigger ones that he's released. But again, the two versions of the All Delighted People song, the original and the classic rock version, two of the best songs he's released in his whole career. So fantastic album, and definitely happy to have it.
Yeah, I completely agree on the song, and this is my second favorite record by him.
Yeah, it's a good one for sure. Alright, so the last one that I picked up to finish out my collection, this is Sufjan Stevens' The Age of Odds. Definitely one of my personal favorite releases from him. It's very electronic based, which is completely different from the rest of his discography, which is like super folky, chamber poppy. And this one was just super interesting because he was more expressive in terms of like his lyrics and stuff like that, because he usually doesn't curse that much on albums, but like on Impossible Soul, it's like a 25-minute song, and like he literally says I'm not fucking around probably like a good like 25-30 times on the song. And just so many good standout tracks on this, like Age of Odds, Vesuvius, again Impossible Soul. Just really well put together album, and it was a complete left field hook because again it's an electronic album coming from a guy that makes like harmonica, acoustic guitar based music. So
and that's why I wasn't interested in him at first, and this is my favorite album by him. I wasn't expecting it.
Yeah, it's a complete change of pace, and if you don't like Sufjan's other work, you might want to give this one a try because it's completely different from his other stuff. So the next like 8 or 9 albums all came from our trip to Attic Records when we went to see Mac DeMarco. We went there when we saw Danny Brown, and we made it a mission to go back to Attic because they just have the most interesting selection of albums that any record store we've ever been to has. So the first one I picked up is Sonic Youth's Bad Moon Rising. A lot of people put this in like their lower tier albums because it isn't very experimental and it's not very art rock and it's not very interesting as a whole. But I want a complete Sonic Youth collection, and this is still good in my opinion. It's just not as interesting as their later stuff is. But that cover is awesome. I really love like the Halloween theme, but really good album nonetheless.
And Sonic Youth is so good, you might as well just finish the collection.
Yeah, exactly. Alright, so I made a unboxing video for all of the Mac DeMarco albums I bought from his web store, but if you guys watched that, you would have heard that I am actually missing this album until now. So this is the Record Store Day pressing of the Another One demos. Kind of good. I mean, it's nothing special, but really you don't expect that much greatness out of a demos album. But still really happy to have it. Now I have the complete Mac set, at least on vinyl. I'm missing like a cassette or two, but very cool to have this one.
Personally, it's one I don't want to listen to often,
yeah,
but it's still nice to listen to.
Yeah, definitely. Some cool outtakes from a really underappreciated album from him. Next up from Attic is an album that I've wanted for a long time, just have kind of put off buying, and this is Mission of Burma's Versus. Now, the way to best describe this album is almost like a post-punk, post-rock mix. It's very Pink Floyd inspired, but it's obviously very based in the post-rock music scene of like Joy Division and stuff like that. So there's a lot of like interesting instrumental quirks with this album where it does certain weird, almost psychedelic type things, but very good post-punk. I mean, obviously like that whole era was just super punchy, all the drum machines and stuff, so it's a very interesting listen, especially for that genre that really doesn't get appreciated as much. So, and also this album cover in the back is just ridiculously cool looking. So next up from Attic is another Black Flag album, and this is Slip It In. Definitely one of my favorite releases, definitely one of the most interesting vocal albums that they ever put out. I mean, the songs Slip It In and Black Coffee are just so dynamic and weird, and again, it's just really good punk rock stuff. If you guys heard us talking earlier about Black Flag, they're just a very interesting band in terms of their vocals and how their instrumentals work. So really awesome album, definitely one of my favorites from them.
Very eye-catching album cover.
Yeah, they always had like a really good like motif of using like these really base colors with these cartoony looks on them, especially like My War and stuff like that. Then I grabbed a copy of Modest Mouse's Interstate 8 EP. A lot of people see this as one of their best projects as a whole, even compared to their other stuff, and I would put it in my top 5, definitely, but it's definitely not as good as, say, like Moon in Antarctica, Lonesome Crowded West, or This Is a Long Drive to me personally, but I know a ton of people that say that this is their favorite Modest Mouse album, so really good, especially for an EP. This is definitely like one of the EPs people always bring up that argue that EPs need to still be a thing and be alive for the music scene to thrive. So really good stuff on this one, just not comparable to like their classic trilogy for me personally.
I would say top 4.
Yeah, it's probably right under those three for me personally. So I've been wanting to pick up some Dinosaur Jr. albums for a long time. Again, it's just one of those bands that I pushed off buying for, and this is my personal favorite from them, Where You Been. Just really interesting 90s like alternative band that got really overshadowed by the more like grunge-filled scene at the time. While Kurt Cobain was doing his thing with Nirvana, Dinosaur Jr. was making this really eclectic, emotional, but very powerful sounding alternative music, and they just were one of the best underrated bands, especially of the 90s. Just really good guitar work and vocal work, and even though Jay Mathis isn't like the most great singer out there, he puts a lot of emotion behind it, especially with his guitar work, so really good stuff.
I think the vocals are a little failing, but
yeah,
the instrumentals behind it is fantastic.
Yeah, and really good artwork on pretty much every Dinosaur Jr. album. Again, always love adding to my David Bowie collection, and this is definitely one of my favorites from him, and this is Heroes. Now, obviously, the song Heroes became like one of the biggest things of his career, one of his most beloved songs, but a lot of the other album is just really fucking good too, like Moss Garden. I really like that song. Song of the Silent Age is a really underappreciated one in my opinion. But yeah, obviously iconic cover as well. This has been parodied by many, many people, and just another great album in Bowie's discography from the Berlin Trilogy era.
I actually just learned about David Bowie, and this is probably the first album I listened to in full. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, Bowie was just fantastic. The final Neil Young album for this video, I promise, this is his album Harvest Moon. A kind of underappreciated one. Again, it's one that I see in people's lists around like the top 10 area, but I really see it as like one of my top 5 possible releases from him. It's just so much darker and so much more simplistic as opposed to Harvest and After the Gold Rush and stuff like that, and those albums are very simple in their own right, but there's something so laid back about even his vocals on this album that make it stand out as one of his most like chill albums. And again, this album art is just fucking fantastic. So really, Neil during the 70s was kind of unstoppable, and even in his 90s grunge return, he made some really awesome albums. So my last pickup from Attic Records was this Sonic Youth Goo 4LP Deluxe box set. Now, this is my absolute favorite Sonic Youth album by far. If you guys watch my top 10 albums videos, I mention it in my honorable mentions. And just this box set is so fucking cool. I'm definitely going to do an unboxing for you guys for this in the future. It's a really awesome product, but what do you think?
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah, this was one of the first like major albums that we both clicked on like at the same time when I was showing him, and it just became one where we would listen to like Dirty Boots and like Mildred Pierce like over and over again. Just really awesome album, and I think I only paid like $30 for it after the deal the guy gave me, so definitely worth it for 4 albums and an art book. Again, unboxing video to come soon.
Always worth buying this.
Yeah, absolutely. And the final record that I picked up for this month, this is a holy grail for me, and I just so happened to stumble upon it for a price I was willing to pay. This is the Smashing Pumpkins Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness 4LP Deluxe box set. Now, the only pressings of this are this box set and the original copy, and the original copies go for astronomical prices. So my next best bet was this, and I've been off and on having it in my eBay watch list for like 80 to 100 bucks, but I waited and I got it for a steal of about like 55 bucks, 60 bucks. And again, for 4 LPs, there's 2 huge books in here. Again, this is another thing I'm going to unbox in the future, but again, been looking for this one forever, probably for a couple years now, honestly, and I'm so stoked to have this one. It has so many of my favorite songs of all time on it, so really stoked to have this one in my collection finally. Alright guys, so that is everything that I picked up in the month of May. Picked up a lot more than I was expecting to, but again, with the Attic trip, and I just kept coming across really good deals on cheap albums, I couldn't say no, so very awesome. Again, added a couple grails to my collection, which is super sweet, so any final words, Skylar?
I'm stealing a few of those off of you.
Sounds good. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments what was your favorite thing that I picked up, and while you're in the comments, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and until next time guys, take care.